Taking a deep breath, she waded into the shallows of the river, feeling the cold water swirl around her ankles. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the water. Chinello's heart raced as she saw the figure of a woman rise from the depths, her form shimmering with an unnatural glow. The woman's face was beautiful but sorrowful, her eyes filled with sadness as she gazed at Chinello. Who are you?" Chinello asked, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's voice was soft and distant, like the wind through the trees. "I was once like you. A maiden. A bride of Ikenga." Chinello gasped, stepping back instinctively. Chinello's heart raced as she closed the door to her room, leaning against it to catch her breath. The encounter with Ikenga had left her shaken, but now she knew for certain that the rumors were true. He was using dark magic to trap the souls of his wives. The mirror in the forbidden room wasn't just a reflection of their faces, it was their prison. She had to act, and fast, before she became the next victim. The following morning, Chinello hurried back to Mama Ifeoma's hut, desperate for guidance. When she arrived, the old healer could sense her distress immediately. "You have seen the truth, haven't you?" Mama Ifeoma asked, her voice gentle but firm. Chinello nodded, her hands trembling. "Ikenga has trapped the souls of his wives in a mirror. I saw them, Mama. They were begging for help." Mama Ifeoma's expression darkened. "The mirror is the source of his power. He uses it to siphon their life force and bind them to him. As long as their souls remain trapped, he will continue to grow stronger." Chinello's voice trembled with fear. "How can I break the spell? How can I free them?" The old healer sighed deeply and led Chinello to a small table in the corner of the hut, where she began preparing a mixture of herbs and powders. "There is a way," Mama Ifeoma said, her voice steady, "but it will not be easy. The mirror is enchanted with powerful magic, and to break it, you must weaken Ikenga first. If he senses your plan, he will not hesitate to destroy you." Chinello swallowed hard, but nodded. "I'm ready. I cannot live in that house knowing what he has done." Mama Ifeoma sprinkled the mixture into a small bowl and handed it to Chinello. "This is a weakening powder. It will sap some of Ikenga's strength, but only for a short time. You must be careful and use it wisely. Once he is weakened, you will need to confront the mirror and perform a counterspell." Chinello's hands trembled as she took the bowl. "What kind of spell?" "The counterspell will be difficult, child. You must chant the words of the ancestors, calling upon the spirits to free the souls of the trapped women. But remember, the mirror will fight back. It is tied to Ikenga's dark magic. If you falter, the spell could consume you." Chinello felt a knot tighten in her stomach, but she nodded. "I will do it. I have no choice." Mama Ifeoma placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You are brave, Chinello, but do not underestimate Ikenga. His magic is powerful, and he will not give up his hold on you easily." That evening, Chinello returned to Ikenga's house with the weakening powder hidden beneath her clothes. Every step she took was heavy with dread, but she knew she could not delay any longer. She would not wait until it was too late, like the women before her. She had to strike while she still had some time to learn. Ikenga was in his study when Chinello entered, his dark eyes watching her carefully as she approached. She could feel the weight of his gaze, as if he already suspected something. "Chinello," Ikenga said smoothly, "you have been quiet lately. Is something troubling you?" Chinello forced a smile, though her heart was pounding. "No, husband. I have just been adjusting to my new life." Ikenga's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded. "I see. Well, I trust you are comfortable in your new home." Chinello took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the pouch of powder hidden in her folds. "Yes, very comfortable," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She moved closer, pretending to straighten a vase on the shelf behind him. With quick, nimble fingers, she carefully sprinkled a small amount of the powder onto Ikenga's drink without him noticing. Her hands shook, but she kept her movements subtle, knowing that if Ikenga caught her, it would be the end. "I'll leave you to your work," Chinello said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ikenga nodded, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Chinello quickly left the room, her heart racing. Now, all she had to do was wait. Later that night, Chinello lay in her bed, waiting for the moment to strike. She could only hope that the weakening powder had taken effect. The house was eerily quiet, but the whispers she had come to dread soon returned, floating through the dark like faint echoes from another world. The time had come. Chinello slipped out of bed and made her way to the forbidden room. This time, she didn't hesitate. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The same eerie glow emanated from the mirror, casting long, flickering shadows across the walls. The faces of the trapped wives stared at her from behind the glass, their expressions filled with sorrow and fear. They reached out toward her, their hands pressed against the cold surface of the mirror. "Help us," they whispered, their voices barely audible. Chinello's heart raced as she approached the mirror, the weight of their suffering pressing down on her. She could feel the pull of the dark magic, a cold force that seemed to reach out and wrap around her, trying to draw her in. But Chinello was ready. She took out the small pouch Mama Ifioma had given her, holding it tightly in one hand, and began to chant the words of the counterspell. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she repeated the words, it grew stronger, filled with the power of the ancestors. The air in the room began to stir, as if the very walls were reacting to the magic. The mirror trembled, the faces of the wives flickering like candle flames. A cold wind whipped through the room, but Chinello stood her ground, her voice rising above the storm of magic that surrounded her. Suddenly, the mirror began to crack. A thin line appeared at the top and snaked its way down the center, splitting the glass in two. The women's faces became clearer, their eyes filled with hope as the spell took hold. But just as Chinello thought she had succeeded, a sharp pain shot through her chest. She gasped, clutching at her heart as a dark force seemed to wrap around her, squeezing the life out of her. "No," she cried, struggling to keep chanting. The mirror was fighting back, Ikenga's dark magic trying to overpower her. For a moment, Chinello thought she might lose the battle. The weight of the magic pressed down on her, and the room began to spin. But then she remembered Mama Ifioma's words, "You must call upon the ancestors." With every ounce of strength she had left, Chinello whispered a final prayer to the spirits of the land, calling on them to lend her their power. She closed her eyes, and in the darkness, she felt a surge of warmth, a presence, like the embrace of her mother long ago. The weight lifted, and Chinello's voice rang out, clear and strong. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, the sound echoing through the room like thunder. The trapped souls were free. As the mirror shattered, the shards flew through the air, glinting in the dim light like falling stars. The room became eerily silent, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Chinello stood frozen, her heart still pounding in her chest, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The faces of the trapped women were gone. The ghostly figures that had once been pressed against the glass had vanished, leaving nothing but empty space where their suffering had been. For the first time in what felt like ages, the air felt lighter, the oppressive weight of dark magic lifting from the room. But Chinello didn't feel victorious. Though she had broken the mirror's spell, a deep sense of dread lingered in her heart. She knew Ikenga's power wasn't completely gone, not yet. The mirror had only been part of his magic, there was still more to face. Before she could gather her thoughts, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Chinello's blood ran cold. Ikenga was coming. She had no time to hide. No time to escape. All she could do was stand her ground, holding tightly to the small charm Mama Ifioma had given her. As the footsteps grew closer, Chinello could feel the air around her grow colder once again. Ikenga appeared in the doorway, his eyes blazing with fury. His gaze flickered to the shattered mirror, and his face twisted with rage. "What have you done?" he roared, his voice echoing through the room like a thunderclap. Chinelo felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to stand tall. I know your secret, Ikenga. I know what you've done to your wives, and I won't let you do the same to me. Ikenga's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer. You foolish girl, he hissed. Do you think you can defy me? Do you think you are strong enough to escape my magic? Chinelo clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. I have already freed them, she said, her voice shaking but determined. I broke the mirror, and the souls of your wives are no longer under your control. For a moment, Ikenga looked shocked. His eyes darted to the remains of the mirror, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. But then his expression darkened, and a cruel smile spread across his face. You may have broken the mirror, but my power is far from gone. You are still mine, Chinelo, and there is no escape. Chinelo took a step back as Ikenga raised his hand. The air around her grew heavy, and she could feel the dark magic gathering around him like a storm. But this time, she was not entirely helpless. She reached into the pouch Mama Ifeoma had given her and threw the last of the weakening powder at Ikenga. The powder shimmered in the air for a brief moment before settling around him like a cloud. For a split second, Ikenga's movement slowed, and his magic faltered. Now is your chance, a voice whispered in Chinelo's mind, Mama Ifeoma's voice, guiding her from afar. With Ikenga momentarily weakened, Chinelo turned and ran, sprinting down the hallway as fast as her legs could carry her. She could hear Ikenga's angry shouts behind her, but she didn't dare look back. Her only hope now was to reach Mama Ifeoma before Ikenga could regain his strength. The village was eerily quiet as Chinelo raced through the streets, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The moon hung high in the sky, casting long shadows over the ground. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant howls of night animals, and the pounding of her own heart. She could still hear Ikenga's voice in her mind, a low growl that sent shivers down her spine. You cannot escape me, Chinelo. I will find you. But she had to keep running. Mama Ifeoma's hut wasn't far now. The healer was the only one who could help her. Chinelo knew that confronting Ikenga on her own would be impossible without more guidance. As she neared the edge of the village, a strange sensation washed over her. The air around her grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally, as if they were alive. A prickling sense of dread crawled up her spine, and she realized with horror that Ikenga's magic was closing in. Don't stop, Chinelo whispered to herself, her legs burning with exhaustion. Keep going. But suddenly, the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift. A dark mist began to rise from the earth, swirling around her like a fog. Chinelo stumbled, her vision blurring as the mist thickened. She could hear Ikenga's voice growing louder in her mind, mocking her, taunting her. You think you can outrun me, Chinelo? You think you can defy me and live? Panic surged in her chest as the mist wrapped itself around her ankles, pulling her down. She struggled, kicking at the mist, but it only grew stronger, tightening its grip on her legs. She could feel the dark magic seeping into her, cold and suffocating. Just as Chinelo thought she might be trapped, a voice cut through the darkness, a voice she recognized. It was Mama Ifeoma. Do not give in, child, the healer's voice echoed in her mind. You are stronger than his magic. Use the protection charm. Chinelo's hand flew to the small pouch that still hung around her neck. She gripped it tightly, feeling a surge of warmth spread through her fingers. The mist around her wavered, and for a moment, it loosened its hold on her. With all her strength, Chinelo yanked her legs free and stumbled forward, breaking out of the mist. She could see Mama Ifeoma's hut now, just a few steps away. As she reached the door, she heard a roar of frustration behind her. Ikenga's dark magic was still close, but for now, she was safe. Chinelo burst into Mama Ifeoma's hut, gasping for breath. The old healer was waiting for her, standing by the hearth with a calm but serious expression. You have done well to make it this far, Mama Ifeoma said, her eyes filled with warmth. But the battle is far from over. Ikenga will not rest until he has you in his grasp. Chinelo collapsed onto a nearby stool, her body trembling with exhaustion. I shattered the mirror, Mama. But his power is still strong. How can I stop him? Mama Ifeoma nodded, her face grave. The mirror was only the beginning. Ikenga's magic is tied to something far more powerful, the very source of his life force. If you are to defeat him, you must find that source and destroy it. Chinelo's heart sank. But how? Where is it? Mama Ifeoma walked over to a small shelf and pulled down an ancient, weathered scroll. She unrolled it carefully, revealing symbols and drawings that Chinelo couldn't quite understand. This scroll, Mama Ifeoma explained, speaks of a powerful talisman that warlocks like Ikenga use to sustain their magic. It is hidden, often in plain sight, and as long as it remains intact, their power cannot be fully broken. Chinelo's mind raced. Could it be that Ikenga's power wasn't just in his spells or his rituals, but in an object, a talisman that he kept hidden? The talisman could be anything, Mama Ifeoma continued. An object of great value, something he treasures, or something that is always with him. You must find it, Chinelo. Only then can you truly free yourself from his grasp. Chinelo nodded, her resolve hardening. She knew that confronting Ikenga would be dangerous, but she had no choice. If she wanted to survive, if she wanted to live free from the terror of his magic, she had to find the talisman and destroy it. Mama Ifeoma placed a hand on Chinelo's shoulder. You are not alone in this fight. The ancestors are with you, and their power will guide you. Trust in yourself, and you will find the strength to face him. Chinelo took a deep breath, her fear slowly giving way to determination. She had come this far, and she would not turn back now. I will find it, she said quietly, her voice filled with resolve. I will end this. The words of Mama Ifeoma echoed in Chinelo's mind as she made her way back to Ikenga's house. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the enormity of what she had to do. Somewhere, hidden in plain sight, was the talisman that held Ikenga's power, and she needed to find it before it was too late. The night was still, and the moon hung high, casting long shadows over the village. Chinelo's thoughts raced as she approached the grand gates of Ikenga's compound. What could the talisman be? Something he always kept with him, something he treasured. She recalled how Ikenga always wore a golden amulet around his neck. The amulet glistened in the sunlight, and he would often touch it absent-mindedly when he spoke. Could that be it? Or was there something else? She didn't have time to second-guess herself. She had to act quickly before Ikenga could grow suspicious of her plans. Chinelo entered the house cautiously, her senses on high alert. The house was dark and eerily quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She moved through the hallways silently, her eyes darting around, looking for anything unusual. Finally, she reached the room where she had shattered the mirror. The broken glass still lay scattered on the floor, twinkling in the faint light. Chinelo felt a chill crawl down her spine as she stepped inside. She had not forgotten Ikenga's fury when he had seen the shattered mirror. She was certain that if he caught her again, there would be no escape. Her gaze fell on the large wooden chest in the corner of the room. It was ornately carved, with symbols and designs that Chinelo couldn't quite understand. The chest was always locked, and she had never seen Ikenga open it in her time there. Her heart pounded in her chest as she knelt before the chest. Was the talisman inside? Summoning her courage, Chinelo reached for the key that she had stolen from Ikenga's room earlier that evening. With trembling hands, she inserted it into the lock and turned it. The chest creaked open, revealing its contents. Inside, wrapped in rich cloth, lay the amulet. The same golden amulet that Ikenga wore around his neck, now glowing faintly in the dim light. Chinelo's breath caught in her throat. This was it. This had to be the talisman that held his power. But as she reached for it, she felt a presence behind her, a cold, menacing presence. Before she could react, a hand clamped down on her wrist, freezing her in place. "I see you found my little secret," Ikenga's voice growled, low and dangerous. Chinelo's heart dropped as she looked up and saw Ikenga standing over her, his eyes blazing with fury. His face was twisted into a cruel smile, and the air around him seemed to hum with dark magic. Chinelo struggled to pull her hand free from Ikenga's grip, but his hold was like iron. His eyes gleamed with malice as he leaned down, his face inches from hers. "Did you really think you could defeat me, Chinelo? Did you think you could outsmart a warlock?" The power radiating from Ikenga was overwhelming, like a dark cloud suffocating her. She felt as though the air had been drained from the room, making it hard to breathe. Still, she forced herself to stay calm, clutching the charm that Mama Ifioma had given her in her other hand. "I know your secret, Ikenga," Chinelo said, her voice trembling but defiant. "Your power comes from this talisman. If I destroy it, you will lose everything." Ikenga's smile only widened, a cruel laugh escaping his lips. "Foolish girl," he hissed. "You know nothing of my power. Even if you destroy the talisman, I will not be so easily defeated. My magic runs deeper than you could ever understand." But Chinelo refused to give in to fear. She had come too far to be stopped now. With a surge of desperation, she yanked her hand free from Ikenga's grip and grabbed the amulet. The moment her fingers touched the cold metal, she felt a jolt of energy course through her, almost knocking her off her feet. The amulet pulsed with a dark, malevolent force, as if it were alive. But Chinelo held on, her grip tightening as she summoned every ounce of strength within her. Ikenga's eyes widened in alarm. "No," he roared, reaching for the amulet. But Chinelo was faster. She lifted the amulet high and brought it crashing down onto the stone floor. The amulet shattered into 1,000 pieces. A deafening scream filled the room, not from Ikenga, but from the very air around them. The dark magic that had filled the house seemed to implode, collapsing in on itself as if the very essence of the warlock's power had been torn apart. Ikenga staggered backward, his face contorted in pain and fury. You, he gasped, his voice ragged. His once powerful aura had begun to fade, and Chinelo could see the life draining from his eyes. But just as she thought she had won, Ikenga let out a dark, guttural laugh. "You may have broken the talisman," he rasped, "but you have not destroyed me. The curse will still remain." Chinelo's heart sank as she watched Ikenga's form dissolve into shadow, his words echoing in her ears. He was gone, but the threat wasn't over. His curse, whatever it was, still lingered. Chinelo stumbled out of Ikenga's house, her legs shaky, her mind reeling from what had just happened. The warlock was gone, but his parting words haunted her. What did he mean by, "the curse will still remain"? She had shattered the talisman. Shouldn't that have been enough? As she made her way back to her family's hut, the village seemed strangely quiet. The usual sounds of night, crickets chirping, the distant call of animals, were gone. The air felt thick with tension, as if the village itself was holding its breath. When she arrived at her family's hut, she found her father sitting outside, his face drawn with worry. "Chinelo," he whispered, relief flooding his voice as he saw her. "Thank the gods, you're safe." Chinelo collapsed into his arms, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's over," she sobbed. "Ikenga is gone. I destroyed the talisman." Her father held her tightly, but there was no joy in his eyes. "I don't know, my daughter," he said quietly. Something is not right." Chinelo looked up at him, her heart sinking. "What do you mean?" Her father gestured to the village around them. "Since you left Ikenga's house, strange things have been happening. The crops have begun to wither, the animals are restless, and the air, it feels wrong. It's as if something dark still lingers over us." Chinelo's stomach churned with dread. Could it be that Ikenga's curse was spreading, even in his absence? Had she truly failed to break his power? She wiped her tears and stood up, her resolve hardening once again. "I'll go to Mama Ifeoma," she said, her voice firm. "She'll know what to do." Her father nodded, though his face was still clouded with worry. "Be careful, Chinelo. The village is afraid. They're saying that the warlock's curse has not been lifted." Chinelo's heart pounded in her chest as she set off toward Mama Ifeoma's hut once more. She had thought that destroying the talisman would be the end, but it seemed that her fight was far from over. Whatever dark magic still lingered over the village, she would need Mama Ifeoma's wisdom to face it. Chinelo hurried through the village, her feet moving swiftly across the dirt paths as she made her way to Mama Ifeoma's hut. The weight of Ikenga's final words pressed heavily on her heart. As she passed by the huts of her neighbors, she noticed the same eerie silence her father had spoken of. The crops that once stood tall and green were now wilting, their leaves shriveled and dry. Livestock huddled together, their usual calls muted as though they, too, could sense the lingering darkness. Fear prickled at the back of Chinelo's neck. She had done everything right, broken the talisman, defied the warlock, but still, his shadow remained. Mama Ifeoma's hut appeared in the distance, nestled under a large baobab tree. Chinelo quickened her pace. The healer's wisdom was her last hope. The old woman was outside her hut, sitting on a mat and grinding herbs. Her sharp eyes caught sight of Chinelo before she could call out. Mama Ifeoma rose slowly, her movements deliberate, as if she had been expecting her. "You're troubled, my child," Mama Ifeoma said as Chinelo approached. "I can feel the darkness that clings to you." Chinelo's breath hitched. "Ikenga. I destroyed his talisman, but he cursed me before he vanished. He said the curse would remain. And now, the village, something's wrong. The crops are dying, and the animals are restless. What should I do? What does his curse mean?" Mama Ifeoma's brow furrowed as she motioned for Chinelo to sit beside her. She reached for a small clay bowl and dipped her fingers into it, smearing a mixture of herbs and water onto Chinelo's hands. "Dark magic is a stubborn thing," the healer murmured, her voice low and steady. "It clings to places, to people. The talisman was only part of Ikenga's power. His magic was deep, woven into the fabric of his being." Chinelo's heart sank. "Then how do we get rid of it?" Mama Ifeoma's eyes met hers, filled with understanding. "We must unweave the curse. This will not be easy, child. Ikenga's magic has tied itself to the village, and to you. He may be gone, but his influence lingers. You carry a part of his power with you now, for you have touched the talisman and broken it. You are the key to lifting the curse." Chinelo's eyes widened in disbelief. "Me? But I don't know any magic. I barely knew how to break the talisman." Mama Ifeoma placed a wrinkled hand on Chinelo's shoulder, her grip surprisingly firm. "You are stronger than you realize, Chinelo. The magic is already within you, but you must learn to harness it. It will not be enough to destroy his talisman. You must sever the connection Ikenga has to this land, once and for all." Chinelo swallowed hard, fear gnawing at her insides. "How do I do that?" The old woman rose and moved toward her hut, beckoning Chinelo to follow. Inside, the walls were lined with jars of herbs, bones, and ancient scrolls. The air smelled of smoke and earth. Mama Ifeoma retrieved a small bundle wrapped in animal skin and handed it to Chinelo. "This," she said, unwrapping the bundle to reveal a small, carved wooden figure, "is a totem of protection. It will shield you from Ikenga's lingering magic. But it is not enough on its own. You must find the place where his power is strongest, the place where his magic has taken root. Only there can you perform the ritual to break the curse." Chinelo stared at the totem, her mind racing. "Where do I begin?" Mama Ifeoma's gaze grew distant, as though she were peering into the spirit world itself. "The river," she said after a long pause. The river where Ikenga first began his dark rituals. It is there that his magic is strongest. Go to the river, and you will find the heart of the curse. Chinelo nodded, clutching the totem tightly in her hands. I'll do it. I'll go to the river and end this once and for all. The journey to the river was long and arduous, but Chinelo was determined. She could feel the weight of the village's fear on her shoulders. Every step closer to the river brought her closer to the heart of Ikenga's curse. She didn't know what to expect, but the thought of her family and the village kept her feet moving forward. As she neared the riverbank, the air around her grew thick with an unnatural chill. The trees along the river's edge twisted and gnarled, their leaves blackened as though burned by some invisible fire. The water itself was dark, sluggish, and unwelcoming, nothing like the clear, life-giving river she remembered from her childhood. Chinelo shivered as she approached, clutching the totem of protection tightly in her hand. Mama Ifeoma's words echoed in her mind. This was the place where Ikenga's dark magic had first taken root. She had to find the source of his power here, and destroy it. The sound of the water lapping against the shore was eerie, like whispered voices calling her name. Chinelo hesitated, but she knew there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, she waded into the shallows of the river, feeling the cold water swirl around her ankles. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the water. Chinelo's heart raced as she saw the figure of a woman rise from the depths, her form shimmering with an unnatural glow. The woman's face was beautiful but sorrowful, her eyes filled with sadness as she gazed at Chinelo. Who are you?" Chinelo asked, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's voice was soft and distant, like the wind through the trees. "I was once like you. A maiden. A bride of Ikenga." Chinelo gasped, stepping back instinctively. "One of his wives." The ghostly woman nodded, her ethereal form swaying with the current. "I was the first. He promised me love, wealth, and power. But he took my life instead. Just as he has taken the lives of many others. We are all trapped here, bound to the river by his curse." Chinelo's heart ached for the woman, and for all the others who had suffered at Ikenga's hands. But she knew she could not falter now. She had to break the curse, not just for herself, but for them too. "I will end this," Chinelo promised, her voice steady with newfound resolve. "I will free you all." The ghostly woman smiled sadly. "Beware, Chinelo. The curse is deep, and Ikenga's spirit still lingers. You must destroy the heart of his power, but he will try to stop you." Chinelo nodded, her grip tightening on the totem. "I'm ready." With the ghost's warning echoing in her mind, Chinelo continued into the river, searching for the source of Ikenga's magic. The water grew colder, the shadows darker, and the weight of the curse pressed down on her like a heavy shroud. But Chinelo pressed on. She would find the heart of Ikenga's power, and she would destroy it. For herself, for the village, and for the souls of the women who had been taken before her. As Chinelo ventured deeper into the river, the landscape around her seemed to shift. The trees bent at unnatural angles, the water churned with an unseen force, and a heavy fog rolled in, making it difficult to see. It felt as though the very earth was resisting her presence. But then, in the distance, she saw it, a massive stone altar, half submerged in the river. It was ancient, covered in moss and dark runes that seemed to pulse with a sickly light. This had to be it. The source of Ikenga's power. Taking a deep breath, Chinelo approached the altar, her heart pounding in her chest. The air around her crackled with energy, and she could feel the malevolent presence of Ikenga's spirit lurking in the shadows. But she didn't waver. This was her chance to end the curse once and for all. As she reached the altar, a cold voice echoed through the fog. "You cannot stop me, Chinelo." Ikenga's voice was unmistakable, though his form remained hidden in the mist. Chinelo gripped the totem tighter, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I've already stopped you once, Ikenga," she called out, her voice steady. "I broke your talisman. Now I'm going to end this curse." A dark laugh echoed through the air, sending chills down Chinello's spine. "Foolish girl," Ikenga's voice hissed. "The talisman was only a piece of my power. You think you can destroy me with that trinket? I am eternal. I am the river, the land, the very soul of this village." Chinello stepped closer to the altar, her resolve unwavering. "You are nothing but a coward," she spat, preying on the innocent to steal their life. "But it ends now." With a swift motion, she slammed the totem onto the altar. The carved figure shattered, releasing a burst of light that radiated across the river. The water roared, churning violently as the ancient runes on the altar began to crumble. Ikenga's scream of rage filled the air, his spirit thrashing wildly as the power of the totem broke the chains of his magic. The fog dissipated, and the shadows that had clung to the river vanished. The curse was unraveling. Chinello stood tall, watching as the altar crumbled into dust, the final remnants of Ikenga's dark magic dissolving before her eyes. It was over. She had done it. The river, once dark and ominous, now flowed clear and bright, the water sparkling in the sunlight. The trees straightened, their leaves green and full of life. The village would be safe, and the souls of Ikenga's victims would finally be free. Chinello took a deep breath, the weight of the curse lifted from her shoulders. She had won. But as she turned to leave the river, a single thought crossed her mind: what would become of her now, in a village where darkness once reigned?